Hello, everybody. This is Danny with ParTay. So, today we're going to be talking about ALR. What is ALR? ALR stands for ambient light rejection. For those of you guys out there who may not know, I know a number of people who watch the channel are already familiar. But from an educational standpoint, we're going to talk about what ALR is. So, is or is it ain't my baby? A lot of things out there call themselves ALR, and we want to define what ALR is and what it is not. With that, let me just start out by giving you a quick note that within professional circles, there's even some dispute as to whether ambient light rejection, specifically the word rejection, is the right word. Some people feel like it's a bit of a misnomer. Not that it's a misrepresentation, but really the best way to describe what's happening in ALR is that it's not rejecting so much as it is reflecting. So I've talked many times about ambient light rejection. Being facilitated by microstructures in the screen. And I'm going to give you some examples of what those look like. And those microstructures are embedded in the screen in order to, generally on the surface. There are some that have them on back layers, but most are going to be on the surface. And what those layers do is they actually reflect the ambient light off axis meaning light that's not coming from the same direction as your projection light. So that would be considered your off-axis light. That's going to be light that comes in from the side, from the top, and from the bottom. Those structures, what they do is they essentially reflect that light back to its originating source. If it's front-facing, coming in the same angle, say in a long throw or in a short throw, if you had a lot of light that's coming up from the same angle, it doesn't do such a good job with that because, once again, screens are not smart enough to be able to differentiate between what is projection light and what is ambient light. It can't say, oh, wait a minute, stop this light because that light's not coming from the projector. It can only do that if it's off axis from the way the structures are built. And let me give you some examples as to what those look like. So let's go with one of the oldest examples. This is a Fresnel lens. So you see those structures, those ridges that are in the lens. What that does is whenever the light hits it, it throws that light back in the direction that it comes from, the projector. Any light coming in, you see these little arrows up here, any light coming in from an off-axis angle essentially gets pushed back to the ambient light source. It reflects it. Okay, it doesn't really reject it so much as it reflects it, and then there's a level of absorption that happens because there's so much light that's actually just going to be absorbed by those blocking structures. That's the reason you'll see a lot of times that ALR screens have a percentage associated with them, anywhere from 65 to like 95% generally is what you're going to see. So that's a Fresnel lens. That's more of the round structure. Actually started a lot. I say started. It's probably not the original start by no means. It was started back then for lamps and things like that. But most people would remember this with lighthouses. Very much associated with lighthouses and being able to push that light out in a tight beam so it can be seen from much further away. All right, so let's look at one more. So in this example, we're seeing this down here is a Fresnel example, and this is showing manufacturing process on how they cast. They pour their resin into this mold, and then you put a substrate on top of it. It binds to the substrate, and then they pull it up, and now it has that embedded into the screen now. This appears a close example of when you hear me refer to sawtooth. So these are used, and sawtooth patterns can be very different. They can be sort of a tighter, kind of this way at the top with a very narrow angle, and that happens a lot of times with your ultra short throws, and that's to stop ceiling light from coming down and impacting the screen image. Some of them are more, sort of like this, like a little sideways pyramid, and that's more for long throw. But what that does is it defeats the off-axis angles as well. So those are all microstructures, very small structures, very, very small, that are embedded in the screen. Let's get to another one here. This is an example of a lenticular. So lenticular, little small horizontal lines that essentially what they do is, you notice here the darker arrows, I'm sorry about that, the darker arrows are showing where the projected light hits the rounded surface and is back. Any off-axis light that comes in from a side angle hits those little areas in there and it reflects it back. So you see a common theme. It's about reflecting ambient light back, when it comes from off-axis angles. That is ambient light rejection. I'm going to give you an example of what ambient light rejection looks like here real quick. So hold on just a second. Actually, I will need to get into, hold on. I'm going to pause. I'll be right back. All right, guys, sorry about that. I had to get my Shield controller. So I'm going to give you a quick example of what that looks like here. This was put out by XY Screens, one of the companies that I have my screen with, but you can look here. So in one angle, it takes it all, and then whenever you come from the top angle, because this is more of a CLR type screen, so when you have that, essentially what you've got is something that will defeat the light. You'll notice it disappears. Some of the folks that I'm seeing out there that put stuff out there as ambient light rejection, that definitively should show you that those are misrepresentations. They are not ambient light rejective. And I'm going to give you something here that'll show you, because I've got some screenshots here. So here's one claim that the product is ambient light rejective. This is wrong. You would not see this if the screen or this paint was ambient light rejective. It's not. That is a lie. And any time that you see, not just this individual, okay, because this guy posts stuff and he's always talking about ambient light rejection, but it's not. Just because it's a black screen and it still shows an image in lighted areas does not make it ambient light rejection. That's like me saying that because I cut a couple of holes in the floorboard of my front seat in my car that I now have anti-lock brakes because I can just stick my feet through them and slow down. It's not the same, okay? And to call it that is one thing. That's the reason when we first started, we were very particular about calling ours ambient light fighting. We didn't want to go ambient light resistant or something like that that could be misconstrued, because quite frankly, guys, especially like we're a bonded company. If you are dealing with the public and public sales out there, you're opening yourself up for legal ramifications and even class action suits. So you have to be very careful, and you need to be honest with people about what your product does and what it does not. Not ambient light rejective at all. Maybe a black screen may help, fight somewhat against ambient light as opposed to a much lighter screen, but that screen isn't rejecting squat. You can see that clear as day. So you have to be very careful. And all this is staged anyway. This light here, it's all made white walls, all made to look like it's super bright. These lights here at the top, the LED lights, for one, they're not even good placement. But the only light from those LEDs that are really at all would impact the screen would be the side ones up here. These right here are facing away from the screen. So that ain't going to do anything. The small pot lights up here, about 200 lumens a piece, really won't do much. So, guys, I'd just say, look, ambient light rejection is very specifically what it is. And if it isn't substructures or microstructures in a screen, it is not ambient light rejective. Otherwise, at best, it provides some balance level of diffusion and absorption, which is what ours does. So hopefully this educates you guys, and you guys have a great day. Thank you.